George Russell believes Red Bull are embarrassed to show their true potential despite winning the opening 3 races. Why did he make this accusation, and are Red Bull really sandbagging? Stay tuned to find out. In the initial stages of the Australian Grand Prix, George Russell yelled at his Mercedes crew as he fought to hold teammate Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen at bay. Pole sitter Verstappen got off to a bad start and was soon jumped by Russell. The world champion then took additional caution entering turn 3, allowing Hamilton to attack down the inside and take second place. Russell was unable to escape his pursuers, with Hamilton and Verstappen's Red Bull close behind. With the Albert Park race being a one-stop race, tyre management was important. At one point, Russell was advised to control his speed by his engineer, during which he lashed out at the engineer. He said, "You're asking me to manage and I'm being attacked by my teammate." Soon after the exchange, the race was red flagged, offering drivers who hadn't stopped a free stop after pitting under a safety car, period. This pushed Russell down the field. Unfortunately, shortly after the restart, his Mercedes engine caught fire, requiring him to swiftly escape from the car. Russell's Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton did bring his W14 home in second to represent the best result of 2023 so far for the Silver Arrows. Max Verstappen had a comfortable lead before the first 2 late red flags that caused chaos at the Australian Grand Prix. You are enjoying this video, right? You definitely don't want to miss out on other amazing videos. So all you have to do is hit the subscription button. It's that easy. Thanks for doing that. Let's move on. Russell is adamant that Red Bull are not truly giving it their all yet in 2023 to avoid having rules put in place to slow them down before retiring after his engine caught fire. Russell said, "For sure they're holding back. They're almost embarrassed to show their full potential because the faster they seem globally, the more that the sport is going to try to hold them back somehow. Realistically, they have around 7/10 advantage over the rest of the field. Max has got no reason to be pushing it at the moment, and neither does Red Bull." Verstappen was later asked about Russell's comments and was quick to insist that Red Bull are not deliberately trying to hold back, with the 25-year-old explaining that he did not feel the need to risk wearing out his tyres by pushing too hard beyond the prescribed limits. When asked if he's holding pace back so the sport's top brass do not put rules in place to hinder Red Bull's progression, Verstappen said, I think anyway, there's nothing really the FIA can do. We just try to do the best we can with the development of the car, but it's also about pace management because we didn't really know how long that hard tyre would last. So it's about just bringing it home because we had a bit of pace, I think, over the others. And there's no need to try and gain half a second a lap and destroy your tyres to the end because you never know, a safety car can happen, red flags like we had today. So yeah, it's not necessary to risk all that. Verstappen went on to explain that he was not worried after losing 2 positions on the opening lap in Melbourne, as he knew that he was going to be quick enough to get back in front, with Mercedes simply powerless to defend against the superior pace of Red Bull over an entire race distance. He said, "I was just quite cautious as well. In the first lap, I didn't want to risk getting damaged, and the cars behind me were really aggressive, which is fair enough, They knew they were not quick enough. So the only chance they had was lap 1, and they took advantage of that." Horner was also quick to dispute Russell's claims, referencing Mercedes' own period of dominance that saw the Silver Arrows win all but one available title between 2014 and 2021. Horner said that's very generous of him. His team would know too well about those kinds of advantages. There's always an element of managing that goes on in any race. Because it was a one-stop race and a very early one-stop race, of course, there was an element of tyre management going on. And you could see how Checo Perez wasn't hanging about. He wasn't cruising around or holding back 7/10 a lap because he didn't want to show it. The grid was certainly a little bit closer here. However, Red Bull's Helmut Marko has asserted that rival teams have already begun to close the gap. He pointed to the fact that Perez could only make it up to 5th place as evidence to support that claim. Horner said, "You can see how close it is when a little thing doesn't work out because we're always said to have a superiority that only exists when everything is running smoothly." Our rivals Aston Martin, Ferrari and Mercedes have made gains, while Red Bull have taken pole position and victory in all 3 races so far in 2023. The gap between themselves and the rest is getting narrower with every race. Russell was only 0.2 of a second away from Verstappen at Albert Park in qualifying, having been nearly a second away in Bahrain on ultimate pace. Fernando Alonso even labelled his qualifying in Melbourne as the best of the season so far, despite being second on the grid in Saudi Arabia. The Spaniard feels that the gap to Red Bull is more important than the position he starts at this stage in the season, proving they're the measuring stick for everyone. After Mercedes' dominance in 2020, rule changes were brought in for 2021 that saw floor and diffuser regulations reworded, citing concerns about the ever-increasing loads being put into the tyres under high aerodynamic pressure. Despite the initial feeling being that high-rate cars such as the Red Bull might suffer as a result, it emerged that lower-rate concepts such as Mercedes and Racing Points were the hardest hit, resulting in Mercedes largely struggling versus Red Bull in the opening half of the year. Back in 2005, the FIA also sought a way to put an end to Ferrari's dominance by introducing a rule preventing tyre changes during a race. A one-season-only rule that ended Ferrari's spell at the top due to tyre supplier Bridgestone being less capable at producing competitive, durable tyres. In stark contrast to the Michelin tyres their main rivals used, after Renault and McLaren controlled the season, the rule was reversed and Ferrari promptly joined back in at the front. But such draconian measures are likely not needed to halt Red Bull, as while there's no doubt the RB19 is a cut above the rest at this early point of the season, there is the fact that the Milton Keynes-based squad will be increasingly hampered through the season by a lack of wind tunnel testing. In 2023, due to their 2022 Constructors' Championship win and a further penalty for a breach of the 2021 budget cap, they are only entitled to 605 wind tunnel runs, totaling 756 hours. Ferrari, who finished second in the championship last year, are entitled to 720 wind tunnel tests, equaling 900 hours, with the numbers scaling ever upward for each team working backwards through the field. Talking about sandbagging, Mercedes employed such a tactic in the past. It's noticeable that, for now, the concerns of sandbagging have emanated from the Mercedes camp, a team that definitely did employ such a tactic in its recent history. In 2014, Mercedes entered the hybrid era with an untouchable car and power unit, easily capable of lapping most circuits some 2 seconds a lap quicker than anyone else as the other manufacturers struggled to hit the ground running with their initial hybrid offerings. Concerned about the possibility of having their advantage cut too quickly by way of FIA intervention, Mercedes set about winning by showing as little of their performance potential as possible. But the situation didn't become clear until years later, when after departing Mercedes for Williams and later out of F1, former executive director Paddy Lowe revealed how Mercedes sought to disguise their advantage. Lowe recalled on the Beyond the Grid podcast, "You've got Bernie Ecclestone, then F1 CEO, running around saying, 'This is all a nightmare. These engines are terrible.' Well, the thinking was if Mercedes had looked ridiculously good, then something would be done about it. There was a lot of tension about how good to look. It wasn't just the engine. We had terrific aerodynamics as well, better than anyone actually, which we used to track because we would engine correct all of our data. And that car was better than any car, quite apart from the engine. In qualifying, we would never turn the engine up for Q1 or Q2. It was run in a sort of idle mode. The debate would then be how much to turn the engine up for Q3. Lowe shared how he would receive pressure from team principal Toto Wolff, who would say, that's too much, while Lowe was trying to determine how much to turn up the engine to secure pole position. Lowe knew that if they didn't get pole position, they would look like a right bunch of mugs. The discussion about how much to turn up the engine went on for quite a long time throughout the 2014 season, and the engine was never on full power for qualifying. Perhaps it's for this reason that Mercedes are projecting concerns about Red Bull through the media. They fear the exact behavior they themselves engaged in when they ended up in an advantageous position. Now, over to you. Are Red Bull doing something similar to what Mercedes did in 2014? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. That will be all for today's video. Thanks for staying tuned. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so that you can always get to watch more amazing videos like this. See you in the next video.